seemed picture perfect. 2 beautiful children, a home in a peaceful Salt Lake City suburb. But when Susan Powell suddenly vanished in December 2009, all eyes turned to her husband, Josh, who eventually became the only person of interest according to police.
For a husband to not communicate with police about his missing wife is that's a huge red flag.
Did you have anything to do with the disappearance of your wife?
No.
Nothing.
Nothing. People who know me know that I'm a good dad. I work hard. I put my sons first. I was a good husband. I guess you could say that I still love her.
Why take your 2 young sons camping after midnight, freezing cold temperatures?
Well, we just go out and do things that are fun.
We didn't get a call from Josh, or no, he wasn't looking for his wife at all.
I suspected it when she was missing, but I didn't know for sure until after he stopped talking. When he was quiet, I knew he did something.
Welcome back to True Crime Brewery. I'm Jill.
Hello, I'm Dick.
Tonight's episode is called Death by Familiar Hands. This is the story of Susan, Braden, and Charlie Powell, and how their lives were cut short. So on December 7th of 2009, the entire Powell family, Susan, her husband Josh, and their sons, Charlie and Braden, ages 2 and 4, were reported missing by family members. Now, Josh Powell's mother and sister looked for the family at their home, and the police broke into the home fearing that the family might be victims of carbon monoxide poisoning. They found no one inside, but there were fans blowing on a wet area of carpet in the home. Susan did not show up at her job at Wells Fargo that morning. Her purse and her car were found at the home. Later on, her cell phone was found in Josh's car, with the SIM card removed. It was later that day around 6 p.m. that Josh Powell returned home with the 2 boys. He was taken to the police station for questioning. He claimed that he had left Susan asleep at home shortly after midnight the previous night, and had decided to take his kids on an impromptu camping trip.
At midnight?
Yes.
I just love that excuse.
Yeah, it's a really shitty excuse.
It's a almost non-existent, certainly unbelievable excuse.
Yeah, it's one of the worst ones ever.
Yeah.
So this is the beginning of a plummet into darkness, orchestrated by Josh Powell himself, and possibly with the assistance of Josh's father, Stephen, and his brother, Michael. So that's what we're going to discuss tonight. And I just want to say up front that this is a very sad and upsetting case. I did hesitate to cover it, but I feel that there are a lot of factors in here to consider as far as our society and how we could prevent things like this from happening in the future, all the way from Josh's childhood to the childhood of Charlie and Braden, and perhaps the way that Susan was raised.
Perhaps. But as you'll see when we discuss things further, I don't know how, at least when Josh was a kid, there's no evidence we have of any reports to social services about him and his family. Not until the divorce occurred.
Yeah, and maybe there should have been, because it was a messed up place.
Again, hindsight is easy, but yeah. And the same thing with the 2 boys that he had with the deceased. That it'd be nice if somebody had taken notice. Maybe the mother who died.
Well, we don't know. Susan is still missing.
Okay. She's dead.
Probably.
But there weren't reports made. I mean, we can talk about later on when the father had visitation, supervised visitation.
Yes.
That some things could have been done.
Absolutely.
But I don't know, it's kind of a hidden problem.
Yeah, and maybe something that our society should address.
Definitely.
Okay. So be warned, it is a sad and upsetting case, and I, for one, won't be offended if you choose to skip this episode. But Dick and I did decide that it's worthy of a discussion at the brewery, and it's a sad reminder that there is evil in this world, but also there is beauty and there is hope.
That's right.
So on the theme of hope, or on the topic of hope, I'm going to read our iTunes 5-star reviews. There were 3 this week, but they're brief, so I'm just going to read them quickly. The first 5-star review is by, now, I don't know if my pronunciation is correct, but I'm going to say Oinkbest, because it's Oinkbst. And the title is Even Without the Beer. And Oinkbest says, "This is an absolutely wonderful podcast. I found it, I shared it with my daughter, and now we are both huge fans. Each case is so well researched and presented, the style of the program is unique, and the delivery is clear and concise. I like that both hosts have their own point of view, which may or may not be shared by the other. I really appreciate this show and am tempted to give beer another try." Well, that will make Dick really happy, Oinkbest, because he wants to spread the word of that beer's a good thing.
We're going to proselytize the beer.
Yes.
And maybe it's Oinkbeast
Maybe.
instead of Oinkbest, but Oinkbst.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
So Oinkbest, welcome to the brewery. And our next 5-star review is from Prom Queen 76. And Prom Queen 76 says, "Great true crime podcast. A husband and wife team reporting on true crime while drinking beer. How much better does it get?" Not much better, I would think.
Doesn't get much better to me,
No.
anyway.
There's nothing I'd rather be doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Prom Queen 76, I'm going to say to you, welcome to the brewery. And then we have one more 5-star review, and this is by Carolina Cat. Carolina Cat says, "Great. Loving the podcast, y'all." I like that little southern that she throws in. "Loving the podcast, y'all. Been a true crime addict for years. Love Jill's great storytelling ability and how her gentle cadence and whimsical nature mix so well with Dick's occasional grumpiness."
I didn't know I was occasionally grumpy.
Occasionally.
I thought I was more perpetually grumpy.
But oh so realistic attitude and smartness. And is that a dog I occasionally hear in the background? Yeah, that's Sophie.
Why, yes, it is.
We have 3 dogs, but Sophie's the girl dog, and she doesn't like it when we go to the studio.
She's sort of misbehaving. So
Yeah.
you might actually hear her tonight.
She might once in a while. We take her for a walk, we give her a treat. But sometimes she sees the gate up, she knows that we're in the studio, and she'll bark. But, you know, Carolina Cat says she loves that too, and keep them coming. Cheers. So thank you, Carolina Cat. And I'd like to say to you, welcome to the brewery.
Welcome to all of you. Thank you
Yes.
for the reviews. That's very kind.
Yeah. So Dick's going to give us our beer review now.
So tonight's beer, this is a crime that took place in Utah, as did one previously that we reported about the doctor who murdered his wife, or was found guilty of murdering his wife after she had plastic surgery.
Right, the McNeil trial.
The McNeil trial. So this is another beer from Uinta, Uinta Brewing Company in Salt Lake City. I'm glad they distribute here in Maine, because it would be tough for me to find some Utah beers. Anyway, here we are. This particular beer is called Cockeyed Cooper.
I love the name.
It's very good. It's a cool label, too.
Yeah.
This is an American barley wine. Now, barley wines are one of the strongest of beer styles. They tend to be lively and fruity, sometimes sweet, sometimes bittersweet, but always alcoholic.
That's the way we like our beer.
The American versions, there's 2 types of barley wines, American and English. The American versions tend to be more hop-forward, sometimes insanely so.
Ooh.
So I know, like Bigfoot, which is one of my favorite barley wines, will just smack you in the face when it's fresh. It calms down with age, and these are good beers to age.
Okay.
The English versions tend to be more balanced between hops and malt. So if you're not that much of a hop fan, try the English barley wines.
Okay.
So anyway, Cockeyed Cooper was poured into a snifter. It's a dark brown color with a small tan head. The aroma is very nice, sweet caramel, some vanilla, and a little bit of fruit. It's a pretty hoppy beer. Again, it's an American barley wine. There's a taste of caramel, vanilla, and dark fruit. To me, it seemed like kind of a hybrid between an American and English barley wine, because it didn't have that insane hop bitterness. It was a little more balanced, maybe not as malt forward as a English barley wine, but still a little more balanced. Good beer.
Okay.
Drink it if you can.
Okay. So we have snifters.
We do.
So we have this
Kind of the preferred beer drinking glass.
Yeah, that's right.
For most anything.
Okay. Is there a reason for that?
Well, just the shape lends you to get the aromas better, and it tends to taste a little better.
What's the difference between a snifter and a tulip? I know there's a tulip glass.
They're pretty similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the tulip has the kind of curve to it?
Yeah, the snifter tends to be more straight.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say convex, but I can never get that straight with convex and concave, but it's straighter.
Okay.
And the tulip tends to curve outward again.
Like a flower.
Like a tulip.
Yeah.
But otherwise, they're very similar.
Okay, Dick. Well, why don't you grab the bottle of Cockeyed Cooper, and I'll grab these two snifters.
All right.
And we'll take these two stools, and we'll kind of work our way down.
Let's go to the quiet end of the bar.
To the quiet end of the bar. And this is when we're going to talk about death by familiar hands.
Let's do it.
So the day Susan Powell disappeared, police labeled her disappearance as suspicious. Authorities searched the Powell home. On December 9th, they removed some items. Among the police's findings were traces of Susan's blood, life insurance policies on Susan for $1 million, and a handwritten letter from Susan describing her troubled marriage and a fear for her life.
Well, now that would seem to be a few red flags.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't look like she took off on her own, because her car and her keys are there.
Yes.
And her phone, too?
No, the phone actually ends up being with Josh in the car with the SIM card removed,
right,
which
the
is
SIM
even
card.
worse. Yeah.
Yes. So, but at the time, her car keys and her car's there.
Mm-hmm.
There's this large insurance policy.
Yes.
$1 million.
Right.
That's a lot.
It's a lot for a couple that makes about $35,000 a year between them. Yeah.
So there's another red flag.
Mm-hmm.
And what was that other thing? Oh, she'd written notes, fearing for her life.
Yeah, as if that wasn't enough. She had a letter was written describing her troubled marriage and that she had a fear for her life. Now, it was Josh's mom and sister who actually really liked Susan, had a good relationship with her, and not so much with Josh. They thought he was kind of a pervert, and it was they who contacted the police.
So it's his own mother and sister.
Yes.
Think he's a pervert.
Well, his sister Jennifer seems to be the one that kind of had a clue to how dysfunctional the family was. And Josh's mother did divorce his father much earlier.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Now, when police interviewed Susan's older son, Charlie, who was about 4, he confirmed that the camping trip did take place. Now, he said that his mom had gone along on the trip, though.
Right. And Josh had said that she stayed home.
Well, she was asleep when they went on this impromptu trip, yes.
So, little contradiction there.
Mm-hmm. But then she hadn't returned with them from the trip, Charlie said. So it was weeks after Susan's disappearance that a teacher reported that Charlie said his mother was dead. He told her that in the classroom.
And did he have an explanation for that? Just that...
Well, he's 4 years old.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
A 4-year-old just knows that mommy's not there anymore.
Yeah, and I think most people don't want to push it. Who wants to, you don't want to push a kid that's been through something like that.
I wonder if did she talk to the authorities about that?
She did. She did.
Okay, so there's a lot of fingers pointing at old Josh here.
Yes. Now, the parents of Susan Powell, Judy and Chuck Cox, said that Braden, the younger child, drew a picture of a van. It had 3 stick figures in it. And he told the caregivers at daycare that, well, Mommy's in the trunk. They said, where's your mom? He said, well, she's in the trunk.
God, that's so horrible.
Isn't it horrible?
And so both kids kind of indicate that mom had suffered some suffered some harm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yikes.
Yeah. So it was on December 14th, about a week after the disappearance, that Josh retained an attorney. And he became increasingly uncooperative with the investigation at that point.
Well, that's probably a smart thing to do.
On December 18th, he took his sons to Tulip, I'm probably saying that wrong.
Puyallup,
Washington, to visit his father, Stephen Powell, for the holidays. And then on January 6th, he returned to his Utah home with his brother Michael to pack up the family belongings, and then he moved to Washington with the boys. So his wife's been missing about a month when he decides to pack up and move out of state.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And when they came back and packed and everything, did they move back to the father's house?
Yes, they moved in with his father, Stephen, back in Washington.
So they stayed with him temporarily, came back to get their belongings, and then went back to his house.
Yeah.
Okay.
As you'll find later, the Powell children, all except Jennifer, who seems to be the only one that escaped a lot of the dysfunction, spent most of their adult lives back and forth living with Stephen Powell. Now, Susan despised Josh's father, Stephen Powell, although Stephen Powell claimed that Susan was actually in love with him.
Right, that she was sexually attracted to him.
Well, yeah. Early in the marriage, Susan and Josh had briefly lived with Stephen in order to save money, as young couples sometimes do.
Sure.
And Stephen Powell, 53, 54 years old, became obsessed with Susan, who was in her early 20s. Now, computer images seized from his home in 2009 turned up 4,500 images of Susan, and those were taken without her knowledge or permission. Some of these included close-ups of specific parts of her body.
So creepy, I can't even describe it.
Well, I know. Susan's friends asserted that Susan's move to Utah was actually motivated by her desire to avoid the unwanted attention of Josh's father. Now, in addition to the pictures, Stephen Powell had written in journals about his sexual obsession with Susan. He posted love songs about her online, and that was done under the pseudonym of Steve Chantry.
The chanter.
Nice.
So this guy, Stephen Powell, Josh's father, he had a very long history of inappropriate and bizarre behavior. His ex-wife, Terry Powell, said in her 1992 divorce filing that Stephen was addicted to pornography, that he fantasized about having multiple wives, and he had exposed their children to sexually explicit material at an early age.
Yeah.
And these allegations were supported by their daughter, Jennifer. Stephen Powell, as you mentioned, had other children too. 5 children in all, including Josh and Jennifer. There's Michael, Alina, and another boy whose name I can't remember.
John.
Jennifer was close to her mom, and she thought her father was a pervert. But the other siblings maintained close relationships with Stephen.
They did.
So they're kind of brainwashed, I think.
Well, yeah, I think so.
See, and this is one thing where you would have liked somebody in the family to talk to protective services, whether it's Jennifer or Terry, the ex-wife, and just had some investigation.
Yeah, it seems like these children, who, they were adults when this case happened, but Stephen and Terry Powell's children were definitely affected by a very abusive and bizarre upbringing.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and this is where I would think that Josh's problems probably stemmed. I mean, there might have been some genetic predisposition to the creepiness, but I would think a lot of the way he was brought up affected how he interacted with women and how he interacted with his own children.
I don't think there's any question. Mm-hmm. I mean, we talk about nature and nurture.
That's right.
Josh had 2 strikes against him.
He did. And
he had this nut for a father who did everything he could to further twist his mind. So he was brought up in a bad environment. And he was probably kind of genetically predisposed to difficulties. But it seems like it was almost inescapable that he was going to turn out the way he did.
Yeah. Now, Terry did divorce Stephen. I believe Josh was in his teens at the time. And it ended up that Stephen got custody of the children. So I think Terry did try, but I'm not going to totally take her off the hook, because she did leave her children in that situation, and I think she probably could have fought that a little harder. Although we'd have to think Terry probably had her own issues being in that relationship. She probably wasn't a healthy, independent thinker either.
Probably not.
No.
So they had some tough times. Now, in September of 2011, which is a couple years after the disappearance of Susan.
4 years.
Stephen Powell was arrested on charges of voyeurism after he was caught photographing his daughter's children, his neighbor's children,
yeah.
photographing them through the bathroom window.
Yes.
Creepy again. He was found guilty, served a 2-year sentence in prison.
That's right.
And then 3 years later, the Pierce County, Washington prosecutor's office announced that he was again in possession of child pornography, and charges were reinstated. Further, Josh himself may have suffered from sexual abuse by his father. The 1992 divorce documents paint a disturbing picture of Josh as a severely troubled teenager under the warped influence of his abusive father.
Correct, yeah.
Terry, Josh's mother, testified that he and the other kids were exposed to pornography, as we said. Josh once threatened his mother with a kitchen knife when she asked him to wash the dishes.
Mm-hmm. There was a history of Terry giving the children instructions or education on things, and Stephen actually purposely going against it, turning the children against her.
Yeah.
So how confusing is that for a child? I can't imagine.
It's very confusing. And Josh has consistently understated and or denied his father's inappropriate behavior.
Yes.
And you can see in the interviews that Josh has done, I mean, he has virtually no emotion when people are talking to him. You'll talk about that some more.
Yeah. Definitely a mentally ill individual.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think you just, without even knowing the history, if you just watch the interview with one of the people that do crime shows on TV, whether, I don't know, it was 2020 or Dateline or what, but he has no expression, just a very flat affect.
Yes.
And you look at him and you say, this guy's nuts.
Yeah, it's really scary. I mean, you can almost picture him killing you with a blank look in his eyes. I mean, it makes me really feel horrified
he wouldn't think anything
what
of it.
happened with his wife and children. Yeah.
So just further stuff about old Steve,
Yeah.
the dad of the year.
Right.
There was a 2012 interview with Dateline's Keith Morrison.
This was unbelievable.
This was chilling and disturbing and horrifying, and I can think of other adjectives probably, but
yeah.
So he's eagerly discussing the sexual aspects of his relationship with his daughter-in-law,
right?
Susan.
Yeah. Yes.
He suggested that she had simply run off with another man. He called her very forward, open, and aggressive in male-female relationships, which doesn't sound at all like what we've found out about Susan.
No, it doesn't.
Stephen claimed that Susan had a long-standing crush on him. He told stories of Susan asking him to feel her freshly waxed legs, and how she would rub up against him when he handed her one of the babies.
Oh, how creepy was that? That was really nauseating. It was bad.
According to Stephen, he never discussed this with Josh, but just enjoyed the moment.
Well, yeah. Why wouldn't you, right?
Well, yeah, your daughter-in-law's coming on to you, you might as well just take it.
Right, right.
He said his only regret was he didn't take things further with her.
Ugh, yeah.
So, and Keith pointed out that it was very easy for him to make these allegations because Susan was missing.
Right.
There was no rebuttal.
She couldn't do anything. No.
No.
Right.
But that was just a chilling interview.
It was. And also in a follow-up interview with Stephen's daughter, Jennifer, she says that her father's stories are not based in reality at all. According to Jennifer, Stephen may have had an attraction to Susan, but she absolutely did not reciprocate. It was for a few uncomfortable months early in their marriage that Susan and Josh did live with Stephen. And when Susan caught her father-in-law spying on her, she insisted to Josh that they move out.
Good for her.
Now, they were staying actually in the dining room of the house, and they had some kind of makeshift sheets or put up for privacy, some kind of way to block things off.
Yeah, those are effective.
Yeah. And she did catch him spying on her through those, so she was very uncomfortable. And also one time while riding in his car with Stephen and her children, he asked Susan if he and Josh might just share her and have that kind of relationship with the three of them.
Yeah.
Why not?
Sure.
So when Josh Powell moved his children in to live with his father about a month after Susan disappeared, Susan's parents were very distraught.
Yeah, because I'm sure they knew some of this history.
Yeah, Susan.
Maybe not the full extent of it.
Right.
But
Susan really hadn't told them everything in order to spare them, but yeah.
Yeah, but they knew that this wasn't a good place for the kids.
They did. And they also knew that the last thing Susan would want was for her boys to be raised in a home with Stephen Powell.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So in late 2010, Josh and Stephen Powell claimed that Susan had abandoned her family because she had a mental illness and, you know, she was very forward. She wanted to go off with another man, of course.
Of course.
So Susan's family, neighbors, and friends, they absolutely reject these claims as being preposterous, unfounded, and insulting. Now, in fact, these claims were part of a smear campaign on a website that is widely believed to be written by Josh and his father. Now, Josh did have a computer background, so it probably was him, right?
Right.
So the website, which went up in 2010, so that's a little over 2 years after Susan disappeared, it was called susanpowell.org, and it was described at the time as the official website of Susan Powell. But the anonymous entries described Josh as a loving father, a grieving husband, who was being persecuted by Susan's family, by his sister Jennifer Graves, and by the LDS Church, because these were Mormons, and he had left the Mormon Church.
Well, of course, and it had to be him doing that. Who else is going to write about being Father of the Year, loving husband, kind to animals,
right,
and all that?
It's just not clear how much his brother Michael or his father Stephen had to do with it, but it certainly was those guys.
But it was all of them doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, meanwhile, and again, maybe I'm jumping ahead.
Okay.
But what's going on with the police investigation into her disappearance?
Well, the police keep telling Susan's parents, Judy and Chuck Cox, that they just don't have enough evidence yet. So they haven't found Susan. There have been multiple searches in the area where he was driving around that night.
So she hasn't been declared dead. She's still missing.
Exactly. And they really don't have any proof. So they keep telling the parents of Susan to be patient and that they will arrest him. There's pretty much no doubt in their mind that it is him. They just need the proof. And, who assisted him and how planned it was. I
guess they're looking at it as still circumstantial evidence, although one of the kids said Mommy was dead. The other kid said Mommy was in the trunk.
Well, that's one thing I wanted to talk about with you. So these children were 2 to 3, 4 to 5 when all this happened, Charlie being the older one. Now, they were there, and they probably had a pretty good idea what happened, but the police didn't seem to take their statements seriously at all. Now, I don't know if that's common in criminal cases where if you're that young, I know you're easily influenced, that maybe they just disregarded it pretty much. So what's your opinion on that age and how they perceive reality? I know as a pediatrician you've had a lot of interaction with young children. I'm sure you've had interaction with children that have been through some traumatic circumstances. And how do you feel about the police's reaction or lack of a reaction to the things that Charlie and Braden said about their mother and the night she disappeared?
Well, that's a lot of stuff to cover. I think the first thing I'd say is that kids those ages are going to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Now, they might lie about things like, oh, I didn't hit my brother, or I didn't poop on the floor, or something like that. But they're not going to lie about the death of their mother.
Well, they don't even know what murder is.
Well, they know she's not alive.
Right.
And she's in the trunk.
But they don't know that what they say would hurt their father. They're not old enough to know that, right?
They don't know that.
They're not protecting him.
And I don't know if the police had somebody skilled in interviewing kids that were abused. Talk to them. I don't know what went on with the kids.
Seems like they should have.
Seems like they should have. I mean, here in Maine, we have professionals that deal with child abuse every day. And they have a whole team of people to interview abused kids.
And do you think that they're effective, that that's something that is reasonable? Yeah.
There's no question that it's effective. It's been shown time and time again that this is effective.
Okay.
You have psychologists, psychiatrists, physicians, social workers. They can find out what's going on.
Okay.
So, but we don't really know how much the police pursued those or if at all. Like you said, maybe they just discounted them to begin with.
Well, from what I've read and seen, it seems like they did. At least early on in the case, it seems like the daycare providers that they interviewed had called the police when the picture was drawn where one of the boys said that mom's in the trunk.
Yeah.
There was also an incident where one of the boys drew a picture of his family and he pointed at the picture of Susan's chest and said, "Ow." This was the younger one, like a 2 or 3-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
They're not making anything up.
No, they're not.
Clearly.
Not like that.
No.
So, again, I don't know how much interviewing was done with those kids.
Okay.
But it appears that it didn't go very far.
But you feel like if they had the right experts that an interview with the children could be beneficial.
No question.
Okay. Now, as far as this website, susanpowell.org, other entries on the site suggested that Susan's disappearance was connected to the disappearance of a Utah man, Stephen Kocher, and he was a Salt Lake Tribune contributor who vanished the same week as Susan. There's no evidence of any connection between the two or any communication between the two.
So they ran away together?
Yes, this was the implication on susanpowell.org.
Yeah, I can see where, if you have somebody who disappeared or went missing around the same time, sure, why not use that?
So the entries actually went so far as to suggest that Susan and Stephen Kocher had run off to Brazil together, and I don't know where this idea came from. Seems pretty crazy, pretty ludicrous.
Definitely.
Now, as you said, Stephen Powell was arrested on voyeurism and child pornography, and Susan's parents, Chuck and Judy Cox, were smart enough to file for custody of the children at that point.
Sure, because Josh was living with the children in Stephen's home.
Right.
So, yeah, let's get him out of that place.
Also with his sister Alina, who does not seem mentally healthy,
Mm-hmm.
and with this brother John, who was schizophrenic and sometimes would be walking around the house in nothing but a diaper.
Great house to raise little kids in.
No, it's awful. So a Washington court granted temporary custody to students' parents. Thank God for that. And the court said that Josh would have to move out of his father's home if he wanted to regain custody of his children. Seems reasonable.
Absolutely. I mean, I might have gone a little further and denied custody to him, but again, that's hindsight.
Well, I think they took custody away, and then they were hoping to do a lot of evaluations.
Yeah.
And
he was going to have supervised visits with his kids.
Right.
So.
Now, Susan's parents, Judy and Chuck, kept being told by the police, according to them, that Josh would be arrested. So all of these efforts kind of were thought of by people at that time as temporary measures to keep the children safe until Josh was locked up and things were taken care of. Because it was believed by these people that Josh had killed Susan. There really was no other reason for Susan to disappear.
It doesn't seem like there could be.
No. So it's at that point that Josh rents a house in Graham, Washington. And it would be determined later that Josh never actually moved into this rental, but he made it appear as if it was his home in order to satisfy the court's instructions, while he continued to reside in his father, Stephen Powell's house.
So there's one more red flag, although nobody apparently knew that he wasn't inhabiting the house. Don't you? I would have thought that somebody would make sure that he is actually living there.
That would be good. You would think that they would have had a social services visit, but this is how he sidestepped the system because that wasn't done. And it was also around this time that Josh Powell's sister, Jennifer Graves, told the media that she actually believed Josh was responsible for Susan's disappearance. Now, the other sister who was living with Stephen Powell and Josh and the children, her name is Alina, and she had been suspicious of him in the beginning, but now she publicly withdrew her suspicions and said Josh had been unduly harassed by investigators.
Poor baby.
Now, in late 2011, Josh Powell underwent a series of court-ordered evaluations. The evaluations determined that Josh had adequate parenting skills, steady employment history, and no criminal or violent history.
Really?
Now, he hadn't been arrested for anything violent. As far as steady employment, He was a guy who didn't keep a job very long, but he was an educated, fairly smart guy.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there were a lot of other causes for concern.
I know.
And
yeah.
reasons to continue monitoring visits with the dad. So we still have the ongoing missing person, Susan.
That's a biggie.
Wherever she is.
Yeah.
There's the child pornography investigations on Dad's computer, his voyeurism and things.
Right.
He was noted to be kind of gruff and overbearing with his kids. So maybe not physically abusing them, but probably verbally abusing them.
Yeah, noted to be by friends and by Susan's family as short-tempered. It seems like he didn't do a lot of the parenting. He tried to be like the fun dad.
Right. And there was some concerns about his persistent defensiveness, although I could see that. I mean, you know that you're suspected of murdering your wife, so I'd be defensive and I'd be paranoid.
Well, I think a lot of that defensiveness, though, to be fair, was based on the fact that he didn't want to help. He didn't want to do anything to find her, so he's defending himself, but what is he really doing to show any kind of concern or any kind of activity or, to bring his wife home, to bring the mother of his children home? There's none of that.
Right.
Right.
And then one more big flag, big
Okay.
red flag
Okay.
against Josh. In January 2012, police in Utah informed the Washington authorities of the discovery of about 400 images of simulated child pornography, bestiality, and incest found on Josh's computer. Because they had seized that computer a long time ago when they were investigating Susan's disappearance.
And I'd just like to say, why did it take them so long?
Well, maybe they were hidden someplace. I don't know.
But I don't know how it could take that long to get things off of a hard drive. But
well,
I'm glad that they told it to them, but it seems like it took too long.
It did. And it turned out probably it wasn't for much of anything. Somehow they declared the images were not illegal because they were simulated sex acts in a hand-drawn cartoon, a kind of 3D style.
Yeah, I guess that's a loophole, that if your child pornography isn't actually actual children, but it's cartoons of children.
Yeah, so that's
it's not
okay.
The same. Well, I don't know if it's okay, but they really can't prosecute it as they could actual.
So is that a Utah law? Or,
No, I
or a
think,
Washington law or a national law?
That's with most places in the United States. The only thing I'd say on that was that, sure, there weren't actual children in it, but as far as the evaluation of Josh and as far as his parenting skills, that should definitely be considered. Whether it's illegal or not, it's definitely inappropriate.
Oh, to me, and again, I'm looking at it in hindsight, which is perfect vision.
Mm-hmm.
But God, whether it's hand-drawn cartoons or live people, it's a cause for concern.
And it was a cause for great concern to the evaluator for child custody, and it was actually ordered for Josh to receive a more thorough psychosexual evaluation as well as a polygraph. And the supervised visits unfortunately continued during that time, though. I don't know why those weren't stopped. That's something we can always look back on and wish.
Well, I know they figure, well, they're supervised, so it's okay.
Yes. But how this was handled, I think that a lot of supervised visits have been in public areas that couldn't be set up for disaster,
right,
as the home was, yeah.
Yeah, and again, you could look at it, well, he's already been put under supervised visits.
Yeah.
And now you have this pornography cartoons, and that they continue to allow supervised visits.
They do, and I have a problem with that.
Yeah,
And it's not just in hindsight. I have a problem with that in general. I mean, you can say it's easy to look back and say they shouldn't have done that. But in general, I think in current situations and in future situations, that should not be allowed. We always have to err on the side of caution when it comes to children.
We have to do what we think is best for the kids.
Yes, regardless.
And protect them.
Right. Now, also in January of 2012, Josh's brother Michael Powell established a Google Sites page, and he called it For the Kids. Now, this is with the number 4, The Kids, K-I-D-Z. Isn't that cute?
It is.
Now, the site's entries claim that Chuck and Judy Cox were abusing and neglecting Charlie and Braden in collusion with child welfare authorities.
Absolutely.
Now, lawyers for the Cox family disputed the allegations, and it was only a few days before the site was removed.
Okay. So that wasn't going to go anywhere, although it was up for a few days, so.
Well, and it just shows an effort on Michael's part.
Yep.
That they're willing to pretty much do anything. And how much do they really care about these children? Doesn't seem like they do.
No.
No. Now, Susan's parents were more organized and consistent with Charlie and Braden when they were in their custody. As parents, they were loving but strict.
Well, you could say strict, or you could say disciplined, or you could say
they had rules.
Consistent. Yeah.
They had rules, that's all.
Yeah.
There were no rules in the house with Stephen Powell and Josh Powell.
None whatsoever.
No, and even when Josh and Susan were married, many of Susan's journals and things said that she would try to lay down rules with the boys, and that Josh would purposely go against them. Like she would say, it's time to go to daycare, I need to go to work, or it's time to go to church. And Josh would say to the boys, oh, well, you can stay home and have cake with me, or you can go with mommy to church.
Tough decision.
Yeah. So totally throwing her under the bus, and just a shitty and mature thing to do anyway. So the boys, they seem to be thriving actually under the care of Susan's parents, their grandparents. And this was according to many family and friends, even including Josh's sister Jennifer. The kids were doing much better. Jennifer's husband said that the kids were basically kind of staring into space and not very reactive for a long time when they were living with Josh and Stephen. But then after a couple weeks with the grandparents, these kids would kind of come to life, and they were following the rules. They were hugging when they met. They seemed a lot healthier, emotionally healthier.
Sounds like they were responding to a loving, consistent home.
Yeah, is there some point in childhood where that can't be saved? They were young, so I guess they were young enough that that could be saved.
I don't know that there's a point. It's certainly true that the younger the better.
Right.
But even older kids can turn around.
So these boys still had a chance if they'd stayed with their
Oh,
grandparents.
yeah. They were still little kids.
I know, yeah. That's what's so heartbreaking. So the boys did seem to be thriving, and the grandparents actually adored these boys. Now, when asked about this time in their lives, Chuck and Judy, they said, well, it was really exhausting.
I'll bet.
But then in the next breath, it was wonderful.
Because they didn't expect to be going from being grandparents to parents again.
No, and these aren't young grandparents, and they thought they were done with that.
Yeah, so I'll bet it was exhausting.
Yeah, but they were definitely willing to do it, mostly for, the benefit of their daughter, who they missed and really thought was probably not alive at this point. So they had actually had a couple rooms made up, and they'd had beds bought for the boys, and put a lot of effort in thinking that they would raise these boys at this point, yeah.
Because they're figuring that there's no way that Josh is going to get custody of them.
No, well, they believe Josh is going to be arrested, and that's going to be that. They've been told this by the police.
I know they've been told that, but it hadn't happened yet. I don't know how much I'd be believing the police, even though they tell me that arrest is imminent. Mm-hmm. I'd be saying, well, when are you going to do it?
Well, they were doing that, but you know how these things can take a long time. So they were trying to be patient, but, Chuck Cox was actually pretty outspoken about the whole thing. He did go to the police often. And actually, when the boys were living with Josh and Stephen, he would go places where they would take the boys. Like on Saturday mornings, Josh would take the boys to Lowe's. They had some kind of crafts classes that were free there at Lowe's. And Chuck knew they'd be there, so he would go there and just smile and wave at the boys.
Just watch them.
He just wanted to maintain a place in their life.
Good.
Yeah. So that was nice. Now, after a while, the kids actually began to open up and share their feelings and concerns with their grandparents. And Braden once said, I hope Mommy knows how to camp, to his grandfather Chuck. And he drew a picture of his mother and said that she had a boo-boo on her chest.
Yeah.
So Chuck and Judy are pretty sure that Josh has killed their mother. Has killed their daughter, Susan.
Yes.
And they have the children saying such. So I don't quite understand why Josh isn't arrested.
Me either.
We've seen people arrested on less.
Far less.
Mm-hmm. So it was on a Sunday, February 5th in 2012, that Charlie and Braden didn't want to go to their supervised visit with their father. Wasn't the first time they didn't want to go, but this time they really put their feet down and didn't want to go. They were playing with their cousins, and they were happy kids. So Chuck and Judy, feeling that they were doing the right thing, encouraged them and said, you know, you'll have fun with your dad, you'll do a project, you'll have something good to eat, because they felt like, well, if we don't send them, we're going to be in trouble. We need to follow the rules of the court.
Yeah, I can see that.
Of course, it's supervised, so it's safe.
It's safe.
Which is really horrible looking back, but that's how they felt. So according to police, on February 4th, it was a Saturday, Josh had deposited his children's toys and clothing into a charity drop box near his house. So he was planning to get rid of his children.
Something suggests that.
Yeah. And they have video of him walking into a bank where he withdrew $7,000 in cash. Now he'd closed out Susan's 401k. He hadn't been working.
Yeah.
So he'd cashed in anything that Susan had. And he transferred thousands of dollars more to his sister Alina.
Okay.
Who was living with
Stephen.
Yeah. In Stephen's house anyway.
Yeah.
So at 1:30 p.m. on that Saturday, he spent an hour and a half in a storage unit going through Susan's belongings. And then he drove 10 miles out of town to a landfill where he dumped things that he had picked up from the storage unit. So it was Saturday evening that he went to a Fred Meyer's department store and he bought 2 5-gallon gas cans and a pack of Sterno, which are those things that keep food hot on a table.
Yeah.
Like at weddings. And
under the tray.
Yeah. And then he went to a gas station and filled the cans with gas.
Now, all this stuff is figured out after the fact.
Yes. Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was figured out later, that this was all pre-planned, which is more
It
horrifying.
was definitely premeditated.
Yeah. Now, Sunday morning, the day of the visit, Josh sent emails to family members saying, I'm sorry, goodbye. And he also called his sister Alina's cell phone and said he couldn't live without his sons and he couldn't go on anymore.
Now, did Alina do anything about this?
She did. She called 911. But
Good.
by then it was actually too late. She called 911, said he had said things that made her worry, but in the meantime, Josh was dousing the house he'd rented with gasoline. And around noon, when the social worker brought Charlie and Braden to the house for their visit, all hell broke loose. He took the boys and shut the door on her.
Right.
Now, it was at 12:08 when she made a call to 911, and the social worker said that he'd grabbed the children and locked her out of the house. Now, the 911 call, how painful is that to listen to? Oh, my God.
You have to think this is the biggest stupid move ever.
I just want to wring their necks.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I mean, she's hysterical.
Well, at least she's trying, but this 911 guy, what the fuck?
Yeah. How do you spell his name? Is that with 2 L's? Just
Yeah.
give me a break.
And are you the supervisor? Well, you can't supervise yourself. I mean, he's almost being a dick.
Yeah.
What is going on here? So it's very painful. Shortly after the first call ends, the house explodes, killing Josh and the 2 children. And this social worker, Elizabeth Griffith Hall, she's interviewed on ABC News, and this poor woman is devastated.
I'm sure.
She spent time with these boys. She felt like a grandmother to them. And she felt like she'd brought them to their death, basically.
Yeah. Well, and how would you think Susan's parents feel?
Oh, just devastated.
The kids didn't want to go, and they're trying to, like you said, do the right thing, obey the law, telling them it's okay, you'll have fun with Daddy.
I know, the guilt.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking, well, I wouldn't have sent them, but I'm not in their shoes, so I don't know. But as soon as the door closed behind Josh and the boys, Elizabeth Griffith Hall said that she heard Josh say, Charlie, I've got a big surprise for you.
Yeah, I'm going to kill you.
That fucker. Then she hears Braden call out, and she doesn't get the response that she wants or expects from this 911 operator. He's asking for spellings of names, mundane details. She smelled gasoline, and she backs her car out of the driveway after he asks what kind of car, what's the color of the car. So she's trying to get through to this operator that this is a life-threatening situation. She says, how soon? And he says, well, we have to take care of life-threatening situations first.
I'll get the first available person.
Now, I don't know. This guy was like one of the supervisors. I don't know. Training needs to be addressed.
Well, I hope he lost his job.
That doesn't help us really, but yes. So she tries to tell him that it's a life-threatening situation. Josh has threatened the children's lives before. And Josh Powell, although he brutally attacked both of his young boys with a hatchet, we know now that they were both still alive when the house burned, and both boys actually perished of smoke inhalation.
And that house was an inferno. I mean, it was just the tapes you see of it. It was just, once it went up, there wasn't anything you were going to do to save people inside that house.
No, there wasn't. But he did actually hurt the boys pretty badly with the hatchet even before then. But they weren't dead. Now, on the same day that family members mourned at the funeral of Charlie and Braden Powell, Josh's brother and sister, Alina and Michael, they went and applied for life insurance purchased by Susan and Josh Powell. The life insurance was first taken out in the summer of 2007. There was a single policy on Josh for $1 million, and that had a rider on it that included the boys for $250,000 each.
So that's $1.5 million insurance policy.
Yep, and in addition, there's a $1 million policy on Susan. And over the years, there were numerous changes made to the policies by Josh Powell. So when he died, it actually stood that Michael would get 93%, Alina would get 4%, and the third brother, John, would get 3%.
What about your old dad? He was cut out?
He was in prison.
Yeah, but he could still inherit.
I don't know. I don't give a shit, really. But Jennifer Graves and her husband, Kirk, were interviewed, actually, and Jennifer was quoted as saying, "Now it's all blood money. All 4 individuals were killed by Josh, and anything the insurance pays out is from his murderous acts."
Right.
Now, there's no way Josh would have wanted Jennifer to have the money, and she said there's no way I would want it or take it, so I give her credit for that.
I'm surprised Josh hadn't tried to collect on Susan's policy.
I know. Well, he eventually would have. I think things didn't go the way he wanted, because he was kind of a dumbass. The whole camping at night thing was stupid. Yeah,
I guess he probably realized that eventually he was going to get arrested and tried and convicted.
Well, I guess he was really angry with his sister Jennifer and his mother Terry, because they're the ones that drew the police's attention to the fact that he was gone and the fans were going. Yeah. He'd actually thought that he was going to have more time.
Yeah, well, they were clearly not on his side.
Well, no, they were concerned.
So, well, and they thought he was kind of a bad apple anyway.
They did. As soon as Susan was missing, they thought, what did Josh do to her?
So I can see where he doesn't want to have anything to do with his mother or his sister, Jennifer.
Right. Now, Jennifer told a local reporter that her siblings clearly don't have any ethics or morals. They don't see their behavior as a problem either, so this really goes to their mental illness or lack of a conscience. I don't know what you'd call it.
I'd say lack of a conscience. I don't think it points to mental illness, but it certainly does to lack of conscience.
Is that something they're born with or something developed? Do we know?
That
nature or nurture?
Sociopathy type stuff?
Yeah.
You're born with that, and you develop into it, so a combination.
Yeah. Okay. So she said they don't see their behavior as a problem, and she says, I'm just disgusted. The idea that they would profit from Josh's murders is just despicable, and that's, I guess, what most people would think. But aside from Jennifer, these Powell people seem to think that that's okay.
Yeah.
These people are messed up.
So did the insurance company pay?
Well, about a year after the double murder and suicide, Michael Powell, Josh's brother and his ardent defender, took his own life.
Really?
Yeah, he jumped off a parking structure in Minneapolis where he lived, and in May of 2013, the West Valley City Police held a press conference and they announced an end to the search for Susan Cox Powell.
Okay.
So the area where they'd searched, where Josh and his sons, supposedly went camping, it had some mines that just couldn't be searched because it was too dangerous.
Yeah.
Now, police had interviewed Michael Powell, interestingly enough, several times back in 2012, and that's after they discovered, 2 years after the fact, that Michael had abandoned his car in an Oregon junkyard a few weeks after Susan disappeared.
Suspicious stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe he was helping Joshua.
I think more than maybe, probably. Right?
Okay.
I mean, what are the odds that he did it? They're over 90%, I would think.
They're pretty high.
Pretty high. Now, according to police, Michael Powell had been evasive during these interviews. Utah authorities had said publicly that they believe Michael and Josh were accomplices in murdering Susan Powell, which sounds reasonable to me.
Definitely. I mean, for sure Michael was involved. I mean, Joshua was involved. There's no question there.
Well, a lot of people thought his murder-suicide was a confession in and of itself, which is reasonable.
And then, I don't know, I think Michael was involved to an extent. I don't know how much, whether he was a co-conspirator or just helped him, but yeah, he was involved.
It was in late 2013 that a handwritten will was actually found in a safety deposit box that was rented by Susan Powell back in 2008. And it said, there was a note in it that said, if I die, it may not be an accident, even if it looks like one. So she's predicting her own demise.
Yeah.
And she instructs the reader not to show this will to her husband because it will upset him.
Yes.
Yeah.
It would.
And it was about this time that video surfaced that we watched. It was about Susan surveying her home. She'd gone to a divorce attorney and he said, well, take a video of the valuables in your home and the destruction. So she'd surveyed her home and the destruction of some of her jewelry and property. And so as she's doing this videotape, we see that the Powell home is a mess.
Yeah. It doesn't look like there's much housekeeping going on.
Well, no, it's piled high. It's kind of a hoarder type situation. Piled high with thousands of pounds of actually wheat, which we didn't cover here, but Josh was very into saving money so he could use money for things he wanted. So Susan had to make homemade bread and use vegetables from their garden and then spend $20 to $25 a week on food to feed the family.
To feed a family of 4.
Yes.
Piece of cake.
Yeah. So there are thousands of pounds of wheat. There are these big commercial-sized cans of tomatoes and beans. You know, the kind of thing that you'd see at a restaurant.
Yeah.
Those big, huge cans.
Yeah.
And also an incredible amount of computers and computer parts, boxes and boxes of it, probably at least 8 monitors and several, just everything with computers. And then there are all these tools, including table saws, huge, expensive tools, 8 drills, several big saws. And then another weird thing was these numerous radio controlled, are they still called radio controlled? These remote control car things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's all these parts for those. Now, according to Susan in this video, Josh had gone on a shopping spree because he was about to declare bankruptcy. So he wanted to get everything maxed out. He used her credit cards and went out to Home Depot, Lowe's, Radio Shack, and just spent as much money as possible. When Susan tried to talk him out of it, of course, he'd hear nothing of it.
Boy, that's just nuts.
Yeah, I think so. Stephen Powell, back to him, he did serve 30 months in prison on the voyeurism charge, but then he was released on that in 2014. It was in 2015, not too long ago, that prosecutors got the 2011 child pornography charges against Stephen Powell reinstated.
There.
Yeah. And he was convicted on the child pornography charges in August of 2015.
So he's back in jail?
Yeah, he's currently serving 5 years in prison.
Okay.
Now, Susan Powell remains a missing person at this point.
Right.
They still have not found her or any sign of her.
Well, they're not going to.
No. Now, my thought, my concern after this is, how could these murders have been prevented? And I think there are many times throughout the childhoods, the marriage, the everything, that this could have been prevented. What do you think?
Well, I've already talked about that. I think there was enough issues in Stephen's home, the father's home.
Yeah, when Josh was a child. Mm-hmm.
That some investigation could have been done.
So something could have been done then, and by who? By whom?
Well, somebody needs to report it to a teacher or a clergyman or something who sends it up the chain of command, and it gets investigated by social services.
Okay.
Because if all the stuff that is claimed is to be believed, that was not a healthy environment.
Right.
And then, even before Susan disappeared, there were things going on in the home.
Well, yes, that's what I'm wondering. During the marriage, what could Susan have done differently?
Well, she could have reported things.
To whom?
Again, go to the doctor, her doctor, go to the police, go to her clergyman because she went to church.
Mm-hmm.
The Church of Latter-day Saints is very family-oriented, aren't they?
Yes.
Talk to somebody there, but she didn't.
Now, my initial thought was, why didn't she just take those kids and go to her parents' house? That's what I feel like I would have done.
Well, but
Pick up and get the hell out.
That's tough to do.
Well, it's tough to do, and I think that her religion may have handicapped her in that area. I think that she believed that this marriage was something that bonded her to this man in this life and afterwards, and it was really expected of her to try and make this work, more maybe than it would be of someone not in that religion, you know?
Yeah, I guess.
I think she really felt like she was supposed to make it work.
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it sounds like it was almost intolerable living conditions.
Sure, sure.
And even though you're married for life and you have to make it work, there should be some avenue that you can do something.
Well, and I think she was, clearly. She decided that if the things didn't change by... Well, she disappeared in December, and she told some friends that if things hadn't improved by April, which was their anniversary, I don't know what year anniversary, I can't remember, but if things hadn't improved by then, that she was going to get a divorce.
Yeah. So then it wasn't that she was beholden to the idea of marriage for life.
Well, no, but I think that delayed her actions. She put up with a lot more than she would have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think so.
And then...
Okay.
When social services did get involved...
Well, yeah, this whole supervised visitation...
I mean...
That was... I feel that we need to improve upon the way that's done.
No question.
You can't be bringing kids to a house where a man suspected of killing their mother, you know, even in the slightest way suspected, should not have the children come to his home.
No.
No.
There
should be, I know that there's a centralized meeting place around where we live, actually, where parents, the father comes in and he has to be there half an hour before the children. And then when the children come, there's a social worker, the father's already been searched and everything's been looked after before the children come in. And they are supervised, and then the children leave, and the father has to wait a half an hour after that before he can leave.
Right.
No, I don't know why things weren't done that way. Bringing them to the home, and then he just yanks them into the house and locks the door. That's not helping anybody.
Too easy.
That's bad. Too easy, and...
No, and I don't know. I mean, it says that he rented this house that he never actually lived in.
Mm-hmm.
It seems that there could have been more investigation of that. I mean, if one of the stipulations was that he had to move out of his father's house, I would want to make sure that he really had moved out of his father's house.
That makes sense. If it's someone in that kind of situation, wouldn't you do, like, unscheduled visits to check in with him?
I'd make some unscheduled visits.
Absolutely.
And see.
So those are some things that could definitely change to prevent things like this from happening.
Right.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add about this case? Because we're wrapping it up.
No, it just made me very sad.
It is really sad. Like I said, I wasn't even going to do it, but I think that it gives us a lot of things to think about in our society, socially, how we can improve things.
For sure.
Yeah. Hey, Dickie.
Jill.
You ever wonder how we make these true crime and beer review recordings at no cost to our listeners?
I've always wondered that. I think it's a wonderful thing.
Well, did you know there are listeners who give us financial as well as emotional support? Listeners with a few extra dollars, they subscribe to us on www.tiegrabber.com for as little as $2 a month. Did you know that?
I didn't. That's very wonderful of people.
They're awesome.
I know we get the emotional support from those 5-star reviews that are always great to see.
Those always make me happy. Now, did you know we also have listeners that go to Patreon and they become True Crime Brewery patrons?
You can do that too?
You can, and you can give as much money as you want per podcast. We have a couple people who give $5 to $15 a podcast, and that helps. Actually, that paid for these new microphones.
That did?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think we should say thank you to our kind listeners, and then we should also give them some free ways to support us. Like as you said, the 5-star review on iTunes is a great way to support us without spending any money.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you could help us out by telling your friends and family to give us a try.
That's right. because word of mouth always works really well.
It's a really good thing.
Yeah.
And we love coming here and talking about true crimes. And I know you love to review beers and give people ideas on what to drink next.
You might run out of crimes before I run out of beer.
Right. Now, I did want to mention a couple of references. One was Dateline with Keith Morrison, A Family's Story. And that's where we saw the interviews with Jennifer and Susan Powell with our buddy Keith Morrison, who does an excellent job. Also, there's a book that I would say I read it, but I listened to it on an audiobook. It's called If I Can't Have You. It's written by Greg Olson and Rebecca Morris. It's worth a listen or a read. And I'd just like to say again, thank you, True Crime Brewers. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Their family seemed picture perfect. 2 beautiful children, a home in a peaceful Salt Lake City suburb. But when Susan Powell suddenly vanished in December 2009, all eyes turned to her husband, Josh, who eventually became the only person of interest according to police.
For a husband to not communicate with police about his missing wife is that's a huge red flag.
Did you have anything to do with the disappearance of your wife?
No,
Nothing.
nothing. People who know me know that I'm a good dad.